Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paypers Women at the Forefront of Payments interview series. Through these interviews, we celebrate the women who are redefining the payments and fintech industries, featuring insightful discussions with industry leaders who are shaping the future. These conversations highlight their experiences, career journeys, challenges, key moments that have shaped their paths, and of course, advice for women starting out in the payments and fintech industry. My name is Oana Ifrim. I'm lead editor at the Papers, and today I have the pleasure to speaking with Lena Hackelöer, founder and CEO of Brite Payments, a driving force in the European payment space. Lena is a leader in the payments industry recognized for her innovative mindset and dedication to supporting women within the ecosystem. And she is among the women who are shaping, innovating, leading, and inspiring the future of payments and fintech across Europe. It's so great to have you here, Lena. Thank you so much for your time and for joining this initiative.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. Well, to kick things off, Lena, I'd love to hear about what inspired you to choose a career in fintech and payments industry.
Yeah, so it's funny because I never really chose a career in fintech or in payments. I think it chose me. I found my way into payments rather accidentally, I should say. I started out in Klarna in 2010. So fresh out of university and was recruited basically by the founder to join their marketing team here in Stockholm. I had been living abroad and then got the job offer before I was actually finished with university studies. So I started out and probably rather chose joining a tech scale up more than joining the payments industry specifically. But Klarna, of course, ended up growing really, really fast, and it became an incredibly rewarding time where I was able, I think, to make an impact rather quickly. And that's how I got my start, and I've stayed in payments ever since.
Okay, thank you so much. And I would also like to ask, as you've navigated this dynamic field, what's been the most rewarding part of your career so far? Maybe like a moment that really stands out.
I think probably starting my own business stands out. And I think so after basically 9 years in the payments industry in various different roles, I decided to start Brite Payments. I'm a solo founder in the business, so it was a fairly big leap for myself at the time. And I would say probably when we got our first customer live, that must have been, I think, the number one most rewarding experience, because starting a business is one thing, getting the license, since we're in a regulated space and payments, of course, is another thing. But that's ultimately just a means to an end. But then when we had the first live customer and we saw that the product was working beautifully, the conversion was good, the customer was happy, that's when I really started to feel like this is real. We can do this. We can build a real company here together with the team I had, of course, then. I wasn't all by myself by that point in time. I think that is probably the number one most rewarding moment, I would say, that stands out. And there's been many others, but if I had to pick one, that would probably be the one.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I would also love to hear about the habits and or maybe the mindset shifts that helped you thrive both in your career but also on a personal level. What do you think has really made a difference for you?
I think from a career point of view, it probably has been the fact that sort of since I grew up in Klarna in terms of payments, which was a fast moving environment. And when things go fast, then typically also quite a few things don't go according to plan. And it was really intense and really wild from that point of view. And I think you after a while, you start to develop a mindset where you feel like, okay, this isn't good. But we're going to get through it. We're going to solve this somehow. It's not the first time that we sort of, there's a hurdle along the way. It's not the first time that we've made a mistake that we need to correct, and it'll be fine. In the bigger scheme of things, this is really not going to matter, even if today this is, a massive sort of setback. And I think sort of thinking about problems in that way has been really, really helpful, especially as an entrepreneur, because there are things that go wrong all the time. There's always hurdles. There's things that break. There's sort of disappointment. That's just part and parcel of scaling a business. And in payments, of course, which is ultimately a business of scale, it's always particularly scary because potentially, for example, malfunction in a product can affect so many users at the same time so quickly. I think having that mindset has been really, really helpful. On a personal level, I would say I went from recruiting people for competence, which I used to do in the past, to recruit more for attitude and really pay more attention to what kind of people you bring on board and what their mindset is. Are they mission driven? Because that really helps not sweating the small things along the way. I think that is something that has been incredibly helpful for me in my career. And it's really only something that I applied more consistently when I started Brite, that I felt like, okay, let's really make sure that we don't just get the good people from a competence point of view, but let's also make sure that we find people that have the mindset to be part of this journey, because not every business is for everyone. It's not as easy as that. I think there are great people that do fantastic in one business and not so well in another business. So it's also about finding the right kind of people with the right kind of mindset for the journey that you're on. And that has really helped me on a personal level, because when things are moving fast, it's also a lot about the energy of the people that you surround yourself with and the attitude and sort of how you spend your time and what kind of dialogues. Because one thing is for sure is that everything around you externally is always going to be uncertain. So the one thing that you can control, I think, is sort of what kind of team you want to build. So on a personal level, I think with related to my work in payments, I think that has been most helpful.
Amazing insights. Thank you so much. And looking to the future, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave in the fintech and payments industry?
So when I started the company, I really wanted to try and build a business that was both really, really ambitious in terms of sort of culture and in terms of performance, but I also wanted to make sure it was a wholesome place to work where people feel that, okay, things are moving really fast, but this is a good environment. I work with really great people. I really like my colleagues. I feel that this is sort of, just a wholesome place overall. And I feel so far, based on what we hear from the teams, we have accomplished that in many areas at least. And I think this would be my idea of a next generation fintech or a payment business that has that combination. There's a lot of sort of, in the past at least, and I don't think that we're unique in that sense. I think there's more businesses aspiring to do the same. So I don't want to claim that we're the only ones that have that ambition, but there have been in the past, I think, either businesses that had sort of a work hard, play hard type of mentality, which would sometimes come at the expense of inclusivity and sort of, certain groups of employees just not really feeling that they're at home there, whether that's, for example, women, as is the topic of today's podcast, but it could also be people that work remote, people with different cultural backgrounds. So I think that is not the future anymore, based on sort of the talent pool that we have and that is available to us and that we seek to attract to the business. And on the other hand side, I've also seen businesses where everything was like nice and comfy and cozy, but maybe the output really wasn't there. And we're really trying to sort of strike the balance here, because we believe in fintech, you have to be ambitious, you have to be forward leaning, and people need to be willing to go the extra mile, but they should also feel that they're doing that in an environment that's like fun, safe, inclusive, and where they want to stay for a long time. And that would be sort of the number one thing that I would like pinpoint that I would like to achieve, our business goals aside, of course.
All right. And one final question for the women who are just starting their careers in this space. What advice would you give them to help them succeed and stand out in this ever-changing world?
Yeah. First of all, do make the choice. Fintech is a fantastic industry. It really is. You don't only have the tech sort of aspect of it, but there's also the complexity of financial services. And in combination, I think that just makes for a really thrilling environment to work in. I think a lot of mistakes that people make, or one of the sort of assumptions that people have, is that you have to be incredibly tech savvy. But you don't have to be able to code, or you don't have to have an engineering background to be very successful in fintech. And I think, so that's my number one advice, like don't be shy to enter the industry as a start, because that's what I still hear a lot from sort of candidates that say, well, it seems like a really interesting company, but I'm not sure if fintech really is for me. And there I would say it definitely is. And I think it has become a lot more welcoming and diverse over the past decade or so. When I got my start in fintech, that was before fintech was actually a term. I think it was sort of a much more niched type of industry with a lot more particular talent, and that has gotten so much wider. But as a woman in particular, perhaps what I would advise is make sure that you pick the right company in terms of sort of work environment, but also find a company that already has women in leading positions, because I find that it typically makes it easier. That's something that we hear a lot as well from candidates, that they're applying because they know that we have a lot of female leaders in the business. And then, of course, I'm myself as a female founder at the helm. And then the assumption is that sort of because of this, there's others that have already gone down similar routes or have had similar career paths. And I think that's always helpful. If you're reporting to somebody that's had a career path similar to what you're aspiring to yourself, I think that they're going to have an easier time coaching you. And I think your relationship with your manager is going to become more rewarding. So that is definitely something that I would also look at. That's not to say that women cannot be trailblazers in businesses that do not yet have that. But I think if you're completely new to the industry, it could make it a little bit easier for you to get a start. So that's maybe another aspect. And then just, male, female, sort of irrespective of sort of what your background is, I think it's always good to try and find somebody that you're reporting to that really is interested in growing you as a person. Because that's going to probably be the fastest way to personal development. If you'll get more trust, you'll be able to do more. I think that's just going to help propel your career forward. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of fintech is that a lot of the business are growing very fast, which means there's a lot to do. So there is room to take more space and to contribute more, which is ultimately perhaps one of the biggest upsides of working in the industry versus choosing a more traditional career path. I mean, whether that's management consulting or whatever it may be, where you have more tightly defined next steps. And we've seen fantastic examples of women that have risen through the ranks. And I'm certainly hoping that there will be more of those examples to come.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lena. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your insights and story with us today. And and to our audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to stay with us for more inspiring stories from women at the forefront of payments.
Thank you so much for having me.